In a moment of real need for Arsenal, desperate to get a win, our first since the 5th of October against Southampton, desperate to claw back some momentum in the title race, Mikel Arteta turned to technical quality. Players that I think he could trust to be secure in possession, creative, fluid with their movement, good in tight spaces, good in the pockets, and they're actually going to add some electricity to Arsenal's performance. I didn't see it coming, a lot of people didn't, nor did a lot of people call for it. A lot of the players starting, fans weren't particularly excited about or thinking that they should be playing, but Mikel Arteta surprised us all, and so did a lot of those players. 5 players in particular came in. I want to explore those in a second, but before I do, I want to talk about how Mikel Arteta's done this before, how Mikel Arteta has actually once thought, you know what? Forget the physicality, I need technical quality on the pitch. We're going to explore that in a sec, and I'll also go through the data that proves that Mikel Arteta's decision to go with these players was absolutely correct. So does he stick with it for Sporting? All that in this video. But let's go back to that last time I mentioned it, the one time that really stands out to me, and it was in a 2-0 win against Newcastle at St James's Park, the year that they got Champions League football, and it was a big win for Arsenal. Title race felt like it slipped out of our hands, but Arsenal pulled themselves back in some kind of conversation with this really impressive win. As you can see, Mikel Arteta quoted on what he said about Jorginho and starting that game. He said that there were question marks because it was going to be really physical, but if you want to go physicality versus physicality, we have no chance there to win the game, so we had to try something different. I think he understood the game really well. He's a really intelligent player. He gives a lot of security to the team, and he dominated the game in many moments. Jorginho was turned to actually 2 seasons on for this game too. Let's have a look at the starting 11 that Arsenal went for and Arteta went for against Nottingham Forest. Now, we've got the 11 there. Let's start with Jorginho, who we've mentioned. Now, Partey has played every single game this season. Not just played, started. Now, of course, he did get a run at right back. We'll touch on that in a sec, but really interesting that Partey wasn't on international duty either, was actually left on the bench for Jorginho to start this game. Once on a yellow card, Partey played the second half and of course got the goal, but Jorginho started in that 6. Really interesting that Arteta turned to him for this game as well. Now, Merino starting in the left 8, perhaps not as surprising because you've got someone there who, with Declan Rice missing international breaks, the toe injury, only fit enough for the bench, probably made sense to play Merino, but again, someone that he turned to in that area of the pitch as well. Odegaard, of course, got the start. You'd expect him as he did against Chelsea, but he didn't play on international break. Now, the other big one for me was Calafiori starting at left back because I know he was kind of, out injured, but he brought him straight back in. Like I mentioned, Partey started every game, so he could have played Partey right back and Timber left back like he did against Liverpool and Newcastle, but no, he opted to get the 2 first choice fullbacks in there too. And then, of course, the big talking points were in that front 3. Now, Martinelli's travelled, so the fact that Trossard started perhaps isn't that surprising, but with the form that Trossard's been in, you actually would have thought that he'd have looked to have done something different, maybe even Raheem Sterling out there, but no, he went for Trossard, a player who's very technically secure, hasn't shown it recently, but we know that he's got that quality, and Jesus started up front over Kai Havertz, maybe because he's played a lot of football, Kai, but still a really interesting decision for Mikel to go with the front 3 of Saka, Jesus and Trossard, as opposed to the expected Havertz, Martinelli with our star boy in there too. Now, I thought it was really interesting because when you actually look at some of the data behind these players and what they did in this Forest game, it starts to tell you exactly why Arteta perhaps wanted to opt for a fluidity and a technical control against a side like Forest, who are quite physical, who are difficult to beat, as Nuno Espirito Santo sides are, and he probably used similar logic for this game as he did for the Newcastle. Not exactly the same, but perhaps somewhat similar. Let's look at Trossard's touch map versus Forest. As you can see via whoscored.com, a real range of touches across the pitch, all over the pitch, getting plenty of shots there as well in central areas. Yes, predominantly on the left, he was the starting left winger, but look how many times he's there in the zone 14 area, which is the D around the penalty area. Look how many times he's in the box, look how many times he's out on that right hand side, and I want to show you Jesus' touch map too. Again, sprinkled across the pitch, got one shot at goal after a lovely move from Arsenal, but popping up in lots of areas, especially those kind of, like I said, number 10 spaces too. Now let me just show you Martinelli's touches versus Leicester. Now, the reason I did this was because this was the last time I felt Arsenal looked really fluid and exciting against a side in the Premier League. And that Leicester performance, to be fair, was a 4-4-2. It should have been a 6-0 for me. But again, a real cluster of touches out on that left-hand side. Really constantly stretching the pitch, taking on fullbacks and really hugging that area of the pitch. Let's put Trossard and Martinelli's side by side, and you can see there's a really stark contrast between the two. Trossard very much playing in a free roaming position, popping up in lots of areas. Martinelli, on the other hand, asked to be an out-and-out touchline winger. For me, if you're going to use Trossard on the left, this is the way to do it. Popping up in central areas, able to get involved in the play, able to contribute to different areas of the pitch as well. And Martinelli, yeah, I understand you probably do want him as more of a touchline winger, but I'd love to see Martinelli get that freedom a little bit too. Now let's compare Gabby Jesus' heat map against Forest. It took me a second to remember who we were playing against Forest, to Kai Havertz's against Wolves. Now, why have I gone all the way back to Wolves? Because the last time we actually saw Kai Havertz starting properly up front with Odegaard next to him in a game that didn't result in us against 10 men like it did against Brighton was all the way on the opening day of the season. Now, he's played up front at times in home games like Southampton the last half hour or whatever, but because of Odegaard missing, he's had to play a slightly different role. So I wanted to see is exactly Havertz playing the exact same role that Jesus was given side by side and see how the heat maps compare. Jesus playing across the pitch, but again, lots of touches or lots of movement, lots of surrounding the pitch in those number 10 areas, in those zone 14 spaces, really central. Kai Havertz, on the other hand, really vacating that space, but playing a significant amount of his football either on the right to contribute to play there, or in central spaces in the penalty area, looking to be, a target man, someone that people could find in the penalty area. They play the position very, very differently, but in struggling to play through teams, Kai Havertz is sort of waiting maybe for things to happen in the penalty area. I'm not saying he doesn't try to get involved, of course he does, but Jesus perhaps is a little bit more proactive in getting the zone 14 space and trying to make things happen for us in that sense. And I think you could see it in Arsenal fluidity around the penalty area with Jesus, with Trossard all popping up in there. Saka was getting central at times too. Odegaard, of course, makes a massive difference. Also had a lot more control of that space as well, which I think was great to see because we've lacked that this season. And actually, I wasn't even planning on mentioning this, but now it's just popped in my mind. Alex, of course, the different knock, you'll know, did a really good video. I think we touched on zone 14. Go have a little look at that, because that is an area that Arsenal haven't really utilised very well this season, and Jesus definitely helps us too, and against Forest certainly did. Now, I want to look at our pass completion against Forest because we're talking about technical security and our, numbers in terms of possession going up and looking like a team that have more fluidity and control. And I think some of the numbers prove that we certainly did against Forest. As you can see here, we've got Jorginho, Merino, Odegaard and Jesus' pass completion versus Forest compared to Partey, Rice, Havertz and Trossard's season average. Now, there's not a lot in it. Jorginho's pass completion against Forest is better than any of the averages from the other four players, and actually any other player in that data there. Merino, pretty similar to Rice though, not a lot in there. Partey, as I said, very similar to Jorginho's, but the big one is that Odegaard and Jesus' numbers at 87.1% and 84.6% is a big leap on Havertz's season average of 75% and Trossard's 71.3%. So those are typically the front two versus the other front two out of possession, and then of course they're both expected to drop in and contribute to phases of play and build up and all that. And it's interesting that Odegaard and Jesus had a massive jump and what we've seen from Havertz and Trossard's average, which again, Trossard, I've just made the point that he is someone that's very technically secure, but out on the left in a free kind of floating, role in the pitch, I think it suited him a lot better than being predominantly back to goal and looking to be a creative number 10. I don't think that suited him massively, but out on the left, he looked a lot better. So, do we stick with this for Sporting? I don't know, because I'd love to know all your thoughts. For me, there's two schools of thought. Do you stick with the momentum build by this 11 that looked really good? Do you give them the chance to keep playing that way and keep building on it? That's the kind of thing Arteta does. But then the other part of me thinks that, or hopes at least, that this was Mikel Arteta going, hey, horses for courses, this game needed this, I have a squad, we can rotate, and actually this next game might require something else. Let's not forget that yes, Rice and Havertz haven't been at their absolute best this season, or certainly in the last month, but Declan Rice was a transformative midfielder for us last season, who I think can be brilliant. He showed that against Liverpool at home, and Kai Havertz was actually scoring goals in the title run-in last season. Do we not want to try and get the best out of him from that perspective as well? So these are really, really good questions. And Martinelli, we know the work rate he offers, and at his best is someone who can put 15 GA away in the Premier League in a season. So These are headaches for Arteta, but good headaches. I kind of hope it's the latter. I hope it's horses for courses. I hope we can rotate, because I actually think those 3 players that were left out entirely, they didn't even come on from the bench, I think will benefit from being rotated in and out and playing with different players and playing with an Arsenal side that have kind of a different approach to games week in, week out. I'm not sure that we can just go, right, that's it, that's our best 11, let's go. Because I still have concerns about Trossard as an out-and-out winger, and concerns about maybe Jesus as as a goal-scoring threat. And is Jorginho the best 6 we have? I don't know. But the fact that we rotated and went for something that this game particularly needed, I think was really interesting from Mikel Arteta. And I hope that we adopt that kind of horses for courses approach more often throughout the season and use our squad, which I've been championing is better than people think. Maybe not good enough to win the title. We can debate that. But it's better than we've seen so far this season. We're going to round it off there, everyone. After a 2-week break, we're back. And as you can see, on a new set here, the Goonerverse 2.0, let's call it that. We've made some changes. Max has been unreal, doing some fantastic work behind the scenes, as you'll have seen from some of the graphics, some of the editing, some of the thumbnails and all that. And a 2-week break where I wanted to build this space where I could sort of do more filming, bring more live streams. Shorts will be returning. We'll bring something really interesting with the Goonerverse podcast as well, where all of you will get a chance to have your say, so look out for updates on that. It's been a needed break, but I'm delighted to be back, and I hope you guys like the changes and I hope upgrades to the channel. It's been a lot of work. But yeah, we're back, and hopefully Arsenal are too. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do, because you'll be updated on everything we're doing here on the Goonerverse. We try to keep you up to date with every bit of Arsenal news and every big talking point as and when it happens.